The security camera footage would later show the exact moment Karen Martinez decided she owned more than just her opinion, she owned the entire neighborhood. What started as a quiet Tuesday morning by the pool became a viral sensation that destroyed lives, shattered friendships, and revealed secrets that some people kill to keep buried. By the morning sun cast dancing reflections across the crystal-clear water of Marcus Thompson's backyard pool as he settled into his favorite poolside chair with a steaming cup of coffee. At 34, Marcus had worked double shifts for 5 years to afford this slice of suburban paradise in Maplewood Heights, a modest 3-bedroom house with a pool that had been his childhood dream. The neighborhood was quiet, the kind of place where people minded their own business and respected property lines. Or so he thought. "Excuse me." The sharp voice cut through the peaceful morning air like a blade through silk. "Excuse me, sir." Marcus looked up from his phone, where he'd been scrolling through work emails, to see a woman in her late 40s marching across his backyard with the determined stride of someone who'd appointed herself neighborhood sheriff. She wore a pristine white tennis outfit that screamed country club membership. Her blonde hair pulled back in a severe ponytail that seemed to stretch her face into a permanent expression of disapproval. "Can I help you?" Marcus asked, setting down his coffee and standing up. He'd seen her before. She lived in the large colonial house 3 doors down, but they'd never spoken. "I'm Karen Martinez," she announced, as if her name carried the weight of municipal authority. "I live at 47 Elmwood Drive, and I need to discuss your pool situation." Marcus blinked. "My pool situation?" "Yes." Karen planted her hands on her hips, her voice taking on the tone of a school principal addressing a wayward student. "I've been observing your pool usage patterns for the past 2 weeks, and I have several concerns." The absurdity of the statement hit Marcus like a physical blow. "You've been ... observing my pool. Don't take that tone with me, young man." Karen's voice pitched higher, a warning sign that Marcus's ex-wife would have recognized immediately. "I have every right to be concerned about property values in this neighborhood. Your pool activities are affecting my enjoyment of my own backyard." Marcus felt his jaw tighten. He'd dealt with difficult customers at his job as a software consultant, but this was his home, his sanctuary. "Ma'am, I'm not sure what you think you've observed, but I use my pool on my property, and I don't see how that's any of your business. Everything in this neighborhood is my business." Karen's voice rose to a near shout. "Do you know how much I paid for my house? Do you know what kind of standards we maintain here?" "I know what I paid for mine," Marcus replied, his voice steady, despite the anger building in his chest, "and I know I have the right to use my own backyard without being harassed by strangers." Karen's eyes narrowed. "Strangers? I've lived here for 12 years. I was on the Homeowners Association board before there even was a Homeowners Association. I've seen troublemakers come and go, and I know how to handle them." Troublemakers. Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Lady, I work 50 hours a week. I keep my lawn mowed, and I've never so much as played music too loud." "What exactly makes me a troublemaker?" "Your pool parties, for one thing." Marcus stared at her. "What pool parties? Don't play dumb with me. Last Saturday, you had at least 4 people over here making noise, playing music, carrying on until almost 9 o'clock at night. That wasn't a party. That was my family, my brother, his wife, and their 2 kids. We had a barbecue, and, yes, we were in the pool. Because it's my pool." Karen waved her hand dismissively. "Same difference. The point is, your activities are disturbing the peace and quiet that the rest of us moved here to enjoy. At 9 o'clock on a Saturday night, some of us go to bed early." Marcus rubbed his temples, feeling a headache building. "Look, Ms. Martinez. I'm divorced. Ms. Martinez, I appreciate your concern, but I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm using my pool on my property during reasonable hours. If you have a problem with that, maybe you should consider moving somewhere without neighbors." Karen's face flushed red. "How dare you? I have every right to live in peace without being subjected to your inconsiderate behavior. If you can't be a good neighbor voluntarily, then maybe you need to learn the hard way." "Is that a threat?" "It's a promise." Karen pulled out her phone and held it up. "I'm documenting everything. Your hostile attitude, your refusal to cooperate, your complete disregard for community standards. The Homeowners Association will be very interested in this conversation." Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. "We don't have a homeowners association. We will soon enough. I'm organizing one, and pool regulations will be the first item on the agenda." Karen began backing toward the gate, her phone still recording. "You think you can just do whatever you want because you own this little piece of property. You're about to learn that ownership comes with responsibilities." "Get off my property," Marcus said quietly. "Excuse me," I said. "Get off my property, now." Karen's smile was pure venom. "Make me." For a moment, Marcus felt the urge to do exactly that. The woman was trespassing, harassing him, and recording him without permission. But he also knew that any physical action would play right into her hands. Instead, he pulled out his own phone and began recording. "What are you doing?" Karen demanded, documenting a trespasser who's refusing to leave private property after being asked politely. Marcus said calmly, "I'm sure the police will be very interested in this footage." Karen's confidence flickered for just a moment, but she quickly recovered. "You don't want to play this game with me, Marcus. I eat people like you for breakfast. People like me. People who think they can move into a nice neighborhood and drag down the standards. People who think they belong here." The words hit Marcus like a slap. He'd grown up in a neighborhood where comments like that carried a very specific meaning, and he'd worked his entire adult life to get away from them. But here they were, following him to his dream house in his quiet suburb. "Get off my property." Something in his tone must have finally penetrated Karen's self-righteousness, because she took a step back. But she wasn't done. "This isn't over," she said, lowering her phone. "I'm going to make sure everyone in this neighborhood knows exactly what kind of person you are. And when I'm done, you'll be begging to sell that house and move somewhere. More ... appropriate." She turned and walked toward the gate, her white tennis shoes clicking against the concrete. But just before she reached it, she stopped and looked back. "Oh, and Marcus, you might want to check your pool skimmer. Something tells me it's going to need a lot more attention from now on." She left through the gate, closing it behind her with a sharp click that sounded like a gunshot in the suddenly quiet backyard. Marcus stood there for a long moment, his phone still recording nothing but empty air. Then he walked to the pool skimmer and lifted the lid. Inside, floating in the clear water, was a small plastic bag filled with what looked like dirt. He pulled it out, his hands shaking slightly, and opened it. The smell hit him immediately pet waste, mixed with something else he couldn't identify, but made his stomach turn. Karen Martinez had just declared war. And as Marcus stood there, holding the evidence of her sabotage, he realized that his quiet life in Maplewood Heights had just become anything but quiet. The woman who'd been observing his pool usage had been doing a lot more than observing. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is just the beginning. A concerned neighbor, Marcus, looked toward Karen's house, where he could see her silhouette in an upstairs window, and knew that his problems were just getting started. But what Karen Martinez didn't know was that Marcus Thompson had grown up in a neighborhood where people like her were a dime a dozen, and he'd learned a long time ago that bullies only understood one language. The war was about to begin. Karen had just made the first move, but it would be her last. Marcus barely slept that night, expecting to see Karen's shadowy figure tampering with his pool equipment or planting more surprises. By morning, he'd made a decision that would change everything. The security camera system arrived via same-day delivery at 2 p.m. Tuesday. Marcus spent the afternoon installing 4 high-definition cameras with night vision, motion detection, and cloud storage. One pointed at the pool, one at the gate, one at the fence line, and one covering the entire backyard. If Karen wanted to play games, he'd have evidence. He was testing the camera angles when his neighbor from the house on the right, Janet Williams, appeared at the fence. Janet was in her 60s, a retired teacher who'd lived in the neighborhood for 20 years and had always been friendly. "Marcus, honey," she called over the fence, her voice tight with concern. "Can we talk?" Marcus walked over, surprised by the worried expression on her usually cheerful face. "Sure, Janet. What's on your mind?" "Well, it's about Karen Martinez." Janet glanced nervously toward Karen's house, said you were hostile and aggressive, and that she was afraid for her safety. Janet's voice was barely above a whisper. "She's telling everyone in the neighborhood that you're some kind of dangerous person." "Janet, that's not—" "I know, honey, I know." Janet reached through the fence and patted his arm. You're the one who fixed my fence gate without being asked. But Karen, she's very persuasive. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. The Hendersons, the Kowalskis, the new couple on the corner. About forming a homeowners association, Janet's voice was heavy with regret. She says the neighborhood needs protection from people who don't respect community standards. Janet, I need you to know I never threatened her. She came into my backyard uninvited, started making demands about my pool, and when I asked her to leave, she refused. I was polite the entire time. I believe you, Marcus. Before Marcus could respond, his phone buzzed with a notification from the security app, motion detected in the backyard. Janet, I have to go, Marcus said, already heading toward the back door. Marcus, be careful. Don't give her any more ammunition. But Marcus was already outside, his feet carrying him toward the pool where Karen and the stranger were conducting what looked like a crime scene investigation. What the hell are you doing? Marcus demanded as he approached them. Karen looked up with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Oh, Marcus, I'd like you to meet Derek Chen. He's a real estate appraiser, and he's helping me document how your pool setup is affecting neighborhood property values. He's seen situations like this before, where one homeowner's inconsiderate behavior drags down values for everyone. You're on my property, Marcus said, his voice dangerously quiet. Both of you, get out. Karen's smile widened. Actually, we're not. Check your property line, Marcus. They were indeed standing on the narrow strip of grass between his fence and the community sidewalk, technically public property, though it was barely 3 feet wide. You're taking pictures of my pool from public property. The noise from the filter violates noise ordinances. And don't get me started on the safety hazards. Derek cleared his throat. Ma'am, I really think there's been a misunderstanding. Karen's voice carried a sharp edge. I'll be right there. Derek looked between Marcus and Karen, clearly sensing the tension, and decided discretion was the better part of valor. As soon as Derek was out of earshot, Karen's mask slipped entirely. But I've been playing this game longer than you've been alive. I want someone in this house who understands what it means to live in a decent neighborhood. Someone who doesn't think they can just move in and change the entire character of the community. There it was, again, that coded language that Marcus had hoped he'd left behind. And what character would that be? Karen's smile was pure poison. She turned and walked away, leaving Marcus standing alone by his pool, his hands shaking with rage and something else fear. Because Karen Martinez wasn't just a difficult neighbor. Marcus, what the hell is going on over there? David's voice was tight with concern. Some woman just called my work asking about your history of aggressive behavior. Marcus felt the world tilt. She said she was from the Maplewood Heights Safety Committee and that she was conducting a background check on neighborhood residents. She wanted to know if you'd ever been violent, if you had anger issues, if there were any incidents she should know about. Jesus Christ. David, what did you tell her? I told her she was insane and hung up on her. But Marcus, if she's calling our family, if she's calling your work, this is serious. This isn't just some neighborly dispute anymore. Marcus sank into a pool chair, his mind reeling. She's trying to destroy my life. Marcus paused, not wanting to voice what he suspected. It's about control. Before Marcus could answer, his phone buzzed with another notification. This time, it was from his work email. A message from HR asking him to call about a concern that had been brought to their attention. Karen Martinez had just escalated from neighborhood harassment to attempting to destroy his career. David, I have to go, Marcus said, his voice hollow. But I think I'm about to find out exactly how far she's willing to take this. As he hung up, Marcus noticed something that made his blood run cold. Across the street, 3 of his neighbors were standing in a cluster, talking in hushed tones and occasionally glancing toward his house. When they saw him looking, they quickly dispersed. Karen's poison was spreading faster than he'd imagined. By evening, she'd probably have half the neighborhood convinced he was some kind of threat. But as Marcus sat there, watching the sunset over his dream home that was rapidly becoming a nightmare, he realized something important. Karen Martinez had made a critical error in her campaign to destroy him. She'd assumed he was just another suburban pushover, learning to fight back and fight smart. The war was about to shift into a new phase. The hunter was about to become the hunted. The call with HR had been a masterclass in corporate damage control. Violent, never been arrested, and had no idea why someone would make such claims. "We have to take all reports seriously," Linda had said, her voice carefully neutral. The caller said she was from a neighborhood safety committee and had concerns about your behavior toward women in the community. "It's one woman," Marcus had replied, his voice steady despite the rage building inside him. "One woman who's angry that I won't let her dictate how I use my own property. Well, we'll need to document this conversation." Now, 3 hours later, Marcus sat in his kitchen with his laptop open, doing something he'd never imagined he'd need to do, researching Karen Martinez. If she wanted to play investigator, two could play that game. Karen Martinez had been busy over the past 12 years. Public records showed she'd filed 17 complaints with the city noise violations, code enforcement issues, suspicious activity reports. She'd initiated 3 separate attempts to form homeowners associations in different neighborhoods. But the real revelation came when Marcus found a local news article from 2019, Maplewood Heights resident faces harassment charges. The article was brief but devastating. Karen Martinez had been charged with stalking and harassment after a 2-year campaign. They're home and moved away after Karen's behavior escalated to calling their employers. The charges had been dropped when the Patels left town, but the pattern was clear. Marcus wasn't Karen's first victim. He was just the latest in a long line of people she deemed unsuitable for her neighborhood. His phone buzzed. A text from Janet, "Emergency HOA meeting tonight at Karen's house. Thought you should know." Marcus stared at the message. Karen was moving faster than he'd anticipated, calling for a vote on regulations that would essentially force him to either comply with her demands or face fines and legal action. But she'd made a mistake. She'd scheduled the meeting for tonight, which meant she was rushing, and people who rush make errors. Marcus grabbed his keys and headed for the door. He had 3 hours to prepare, and he intended to use every minute. His first stop was the city planning office, where a helpful clerk named Rebecca helped him pull the official plat map for his neighborhood. As he'd suspected, there was no legal basis for a homeowners association in Maplewood Heights. The neighborhood had been developed without HOA covenants. "Some people try to form voluntary associations," Rebecca explained, "but they can't actually impose binding regulations on homeowners who don't agree to participate." What if someone claims to represent an HOA that doesn't legally exist? Rebecca's expression grew serious. That would be fraud. If someone is threatening fines or legal action based on fake HOA authority, that's a criminal matter. Marcus's second stop was the county recorder's office, where he requested copies of all property transfers in the neighborhood over the past 5 years. The pattern that emerged was disturbing, for families had sold their homes and moved away. After living in the neighborhood for less than 2 years, all 4 properties had been within 3 blocks of Karen's house. His final stop was the most important, the office of Detective Maria Santos. "What's going on?" Marcus laid out the entire situation, from Karen's initial confrontation to her escalating campaign of harassment. He showed Maria the security footage, the text messages, the public records, and the newspaper article about the Patel family. Maria's expression grew darker as she reviewed the evidence. This is a clear pattern of harassment. The question is whether we can prove it's criminal. She's calling employers, lying to create fake HOA authority, and threatening legal action she has no power to take, Marcus said. Isn't that enough? It's definitely enough to pay her a visit. But Marcus, you need to be careful. People like this, when they feel cornered, they escalate. And escalation can get dangerous. She's already dangerous. She's trying to destroy my life. Maria leaned back in her chair. There's something else you should know. Karen Martinez called our non-emergency line yesterday to report a suspicious person casing houses in your neighborhood. She gave a description that matches you perfectly. Marcus felt the room spin. She didn't use your name, but the description, the address, the timing, it was clearly about you. She's building a paper trail, Marcus. She's trying to establish a pattern of you being some kind of threat. Jesus Christ. But here's the thing, she overplayed her hand. Because when I pulled the report, I also pulled her history, 17 complaints in 12 years, all dismissed. 3 harassment charges, all dropped when the victims moved away. She's got a pattern, and we're starting to notice. Maria stood up and grabbed her jacket. "I think it's time Officer Martinez and I paid Ms. Martinez a visit." "You go home, stay calm, and whatever you do, don't engage with her directly. Let us handle this." Marcus drove home with his heart pounding. For the first time in days, he felt like he wasn't fighting this battle alone. But as he pulled into his driveway, he noticed something that made his blood freeze. Karen's house was already full of cars, and based on the number of vehicles, she'd managed to get most of the neighborhood to show up. His phone rang. Janet again. "Marcus, where are you?" "I'm not going to that meeting, Janet. I don't recognize her authority to Marcus." "Shut up and listen to me. She's not just talking about pool regulations. You've been stalking her, taking pictures of her house. Need to defend yourself. She's got photos, Marcus. She's got what looks like evidence, and people are believing her." "What kind of photos?" "Pictures of you in your backyard, but taken from angles that make it look like you're watching her house. Screenshots of text messages that Marcus..." "Did you send her threatening messages?" "No, I never sent her any messages," except Marcus stopped. "Janet, she's been texting me from fake numbers, but she's probably saved my responses and deleted her messages to make it look like I was threatening her. Full of people convinced that you're a dangerous stalker, and they're talking about calling the police." Marcus hung up and ran toward Karen's house. As he approached, he could see people through the windows, his neighbors. People he'd waved to for 3 years. People who'd seemed friendly and normal. A presentation board covered in photos. He was about to walk up to the front door when he heard Karen's voice through the open window. "Loud and clear, and that's why I'm asking all of you to sign this petition requesting a restraining order against Marcus Thompson." Marcus stood frozen on the sidewalk as his neighbor's people he'd helped. But just as Karen was basking in her moment of triumph, Marcus heard the sound that would change everything. Sirens. 2 police cars pulled up in front of Karen's house, and Detective Maria Santos stepped out of the first one. Karen's voice faltered as she saw the police through her window. The room full of neighbors fell silent. "Detective, what's going on?" Marcus asked, though he already knew. "Ms. Martinez is about to learn that filing false police reports is a felony, and that impersonating a homeowners association is fraud, and that what she's been doing to you, and apparently to several other families over the years, is called criminal harassment." Maria knocked on Karen's door. Through the window, Marcus could see the confusion and growing alarm on his neighbors' faces as they realized the police weren't there to arrest him. They were there to arrest Karen. The door opened, and Karen's confident smile died the moment she saw Maria's badge. "Karen Martinez. I'm Detective Santos. We need to talk." The silence in Karen's living room was deafening. 23 neighbors who had come to hear about pool regulations and community safety suddenly found themselves witnesses to a police investigation. Karen stood in her doorway, her face cycling through confusion, anger, and dawning terror as Detective Santos held up her badge. "There must be some mistake," Karen said, her voice higher than usual. "I'm the one who called you people. I'm the victim here. Ma'am, I need you to step outside," Maria said firmly. "We have some questions about the reports you've been filing." "I don't understand. I called about the dangerous man living in this neighborhood. Marcus Thompson has been stalking me, threatening me, Ms. Martinez." Maria's voice cut through Karen's protests like a blade. "You're going to want to stop talking and step outside." From where Marcus stood on the sidewalk, he could see the faces of his neighbors through the window. Janet looked relieved. The Hendersons looked confused. The new couple from the corner looked like they were beginning to understand they'd been played. Karen stepped onto her front porch, followed by Detective Santos and Officer Williams. The second police car's occupant was setting up a small recording device. "Ms. Martinez, you filed a report yesterday about suspicious activity in your neighborhood. You described a man matching Mr. Thompson's description, casing houses and acting in a threatening manner." "That's right," Karen said, her confidence returning slightly. "He's been watching my house, taking pictures, ma'am. We've reviewed Mr. Thompson's security footage from yesterday. The footage shows him in his backyard installing security cameras on his own property. At no point does he approach your house or take pictures of it." Karen's face went pale. "That's impossible. I saw him. What you saw was a man securing his own property after you trespassed and vandalized his pool equipment." Maria held up a tablet showing the security footage. "This is you, Miss Martinez, placing a bag of waste material in Mr. Thompson's pool skimmer. This is a clear case of criminal mischief. Through the window, Marcus could see his neighbors pressing closer to hear the conversation. The presentation board that Karen had set up was still visible, covered with photos that were suddenly looking very different in this new context. Furthermore, Maria continued, you've been calling Mr. Thompson's employer, his family members, and various city offices, making false reports about his behavior. You've been impersonating a homeowners association that doesn't exist and threatening. Legal action you have no authority to take. I have every right to protect my neighborhood. Karen's voice was rising to a shriek. I've lived here for 12 years. I've seen what happens when people like him move in and destroy property values. People like him. Maria's voice was dangerously quiet. Karen seemed to realize she'd said too much. I didn't mean Ms. Martinez. We've also been in contact with the Patel family. They've agreed to provide testimony about your harassment campaign against them in 2019. Apparently, you used the exact same playbook. False reports, employer harassment, fake HOA authority. Marcus saw Karen's face crumble as she realized the full scope of the investigation. But Maria wasn't finished. And then there's the matter of the text messages. Karen's head snapped up. What text messages? The ones you sent to Mr. Thompson from burner phones, designed to make it look like he was receiving threatening messages from unknown sources. We traced the numbers, Ms. Martinez. They're all registered to prepaid accounts purchased with cash. At stores near your workplace, the silence on the porch was broken only by the sound of Karen's rapid breathing. We also found the fake social media accounts you created to post negative reviews of businesses that employ people you've targeted. The IP addresses all trace back to your home router. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. He'd never suspected the depth of Karen's campaign against him, and apparently others. Karen Martinez, Detective Santos said formally, you're under arrest for criminal harassment, stalking, filing false police reports, fraud, and criminal mischief. As Officer Williams stepped forward with handcuffs, Karen's composure finally shattered completely. This is insane, she screamed. I'm the victim here. He's the one who doesn't belong. This is a good neighborhood, a decent neighborhood, and I won't let people like him destroy it. People like him, Maria repeated. What exactly do you mean by that, Ms. Martinez? Karen's eyes darted around wildly, looking for support from the neighbors watching through the window. But the faces staring back at her were no longer sympathetic. They were horrified. I mean, people who don't respect community standards. People who think they can just move in and change everything? As the handcuffs clicked into place, Karen made one last desperate attempt to regain control. You're all going to regret this, she shouted at the neighbors, watching from her living room. When your property values collapse because of him, when your children aren't safe because of him, remember that I tried to protect you. Officer Williams guided her toward the police car, while Maria walked over to Marcus. Mr. Thompson, we're going to need you to come to the station to give a formal statement. But I want you to know this investigation uncovered a pattern of harassment that goes back years and involves at least 6 other families. Marcus felt numb. 6 other families. The Patels were just the ones who went to the media. We found evidence of harassment campaigns against a young couple in 2017, a single mother in 2018, an elderly man in 2020, and 2 other families who moved away rather than fight it. Jesus Christ. The good news is that she's going to face serious charges. Filing false police reports alone is a felony. Add in the stalking, the fraud, the criminal mischief. She's looking at significant jail time as the police car pulled away with Karen. In the back seat, Marcus became aware that his neighbors were filing out of Karen's house. Janet rushed over to him first. Marcus, I am so sorry. We had no idea. It's okay, Janet. No, it's not okay. This was Bob Henderson, the retired mechanic from 2 houses down. We should have known better. We should have listened to you. She was very convincing, Marcus said quietly. That's no excuse, said Maria Kowalski, the teacher from across the street. We've known you for 3 years. We should have trusted our own judgment instead of believing someone who was essentially a stranger. One by one, his neighbors approached to apologize. The new couple from the corner, the Changs, looked particularly mortified. We just moved here 6 months ago, Amy Chang said. We didn't know anyone well enough to judge, so we believed what she was saying. We're so sorry. She made it sound like you were dangerous, her husband added. She had photos, documents, phone records, It all looked so official. "She's had years to perfect her system," Marcus said. "Don't blame yourselves," Detective Santos rejoined the group. "If I could have everyone's attention for a moment. We're going to need statements from all of you about what Ms. Martinez told you and what evidence she presented. Much of it was fabricated or manipulated, and we need to document the full extent of her deception." As his neighbors began talking among themselves about what they'd been told and what they'd seen, Marcus felt a strange sense of closure. The nightmare was over, but more than that, his community was coming together in a way it never had before. "There's something else," Maria said, pulling Marcus aside. "We found a detailed plan in her house. She was documenting everything: your schedule, your visitors, your habits. She was planning to escalate her harassment campaign significantly. She had researched how to file complaints with Child Protective Services, how to report suspected drug activity, how to make anonymous tips to the IRS. She was planning to systematically destroy every aspect of your life." Marcus felt sick. Why me? Maria looked toward the police car disappearing down the street. "I've been doing this for 15 years, Marcus. I've seen people like Karen before. It's not about you specifically. It's about control. It's about power. And sometimes, unfortunately, it's about people who can't stand seeing others succeed in spaces they think they own." 3 months later, Marcus was floating in his pool on a warm Saturday afternoon when Janet knocked on his gate. "Marcus, honey, there's someone here to see you." He climbed out of the pool to find a young Indian woman standing in his backyard, holding the hand of a small boy who looked about 7 years old. "Mr. Thompson, I'm Priya Patel. I think Detective Santos mentioned us." Marcus's heart jumped. "Mrs. Patel, yes. Please, come in." "I wanted to thank you," Priya said, her voice thick with emotion, "for fighting back, for not running away." "We did. I'm sorry you had to go through that," Marcus said. "I can't imagine how hard it must have been. Harder than you know." But when Detective Santos called to tell us that Karen Martinez was finally facing real consequences, it felt like justice. "Is that why you came back?" Priya smiled. "Partly, but also because there's a house for sale 3 blocks from here. And my husband and I decided that maybe it's time to stop running from people like her." Marcus felt a warmth spread through his chest. "I think this neighborhood could use more families like yours." As Priya and her son left, Marcus noticed that the for sale sign was gone from Karen's house. The new owners, a young couple with 2 kids, had moved in the week before. They'd introduced themselves by Br.